Hello there.
Hello.
Hey everyone. Thanks for joining into our event today. Yeah, we're gonna have a exciting event and I think early holidays as well. I mean, tomorrow we're gonna have a public holiday, so I hope you guys are enjoying the day so far. Yeah, so today we're gonna have an exciting event with Michael. If some of you guys might have already known him, he's the godfather of volunteering for tech communities in Singapore, and we're gonna hear more from him later on. Okay, so let's get into some of the socials for events.
Yep. Quick introduction to Google Developer Space. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. So I'm Jia from the Google Developer Relations team. And yeah, we used to have physical events. I think it's been more than close to 2 years now since our last one. So before the stream, we were just talking about having physical events again. I think everyone misses that. Yeah, but for now, hope everyone is keeping safe while you're at home. Yeah, but we are also really looking forward to the day where we can open up and invite all of you back to our space again.
All right, so to socials, so for Big O, if you are new to the community, today and like this is the first time here, welcome. If you are a repeat, like you have been here before, welcome back. And for those who are new, we have different socials that where we publicize our different events. For example, our Facebook page where we do post our newest events over there. So if you like our format of our events, we do different types of events. Like for example, this is small talk. We have another one where we get a speaker to come in to talk about a topic, and then we do like sort of an interview with him later on. So if you like the format of some of our events, you enjoy them, do subscribe to our socials and look out for the other events that we'll be posting, in weeks to come. In fact, next week we do have an exciting event that we'll talk about in a little bit. So yeah, if you're on YouTube, do like, share, subscribe, all those YouTuber stuff. Yep. And to DevSpace.
Yep. Similarly for DevSpace, we also are on all these channels. So you can check us out on our website, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We regularly host events with developers and startup communities in Southeast Asia region. So yeah, do subscribe to keep updated with all the events that's going on.
Yeah, and once upon a time, there are Android events, but then COVID happened, and now they're gone. But now they're back. So we are looking forward to see you all next week once again. We're gonna have another session of Android Dev Summit. And for next week, if you have friends and or if you are interested with all things Android, we're gonna have two of our Google DevRel engineers joining us for another edition of you know. Big O, Google, GDG Singapore. So Sagar will be talking about what's new in Android 12. And as many of you might know, those who have been following Android Dev Summit in the US, which has concluded last week, there are new stuff on Android 12, aka Android 12L for large screens. And Sagar will be covering some of those as well. So we look forward to have you there. And then also, in the same talk, sorry, the same event, we have Xiao Tao, also from Google, who will be talking to us about how to make money because there's cryptocurrency and then there's also Google Pay. So he's going to tell us how we can earn money from Google Pay also. So please do look forward to it. And after this one, we will have Bei from Facebook. For many of you who have been following us, you might have seen coming soon all the time. The title is just coming soon, but she still is trying to prepare the title. But this one is actually going to happen on the first Saturday of December. And very, very soon she will be able to come up with a title. But in a sense, the whole idea is that she's an IC, individual contributor, for the past 20 years of her career. For the past, uh, for many of our former events, we have been bringing in, people who are at the director level, engineering managers level. But this would be a very good opportunity for us to listen to someone who decided to actually stay as a individual contributor and learn from her, and what are the pitfalls, the hurdles that you have to look at, as you progress in your career. So please do look forward to it.
All right, so this is the reason why all of you are here. And yeah, without further ado, I think let's bring in our guest for today, Michael. All right, let's welcome Michael.
Oh, hi. Hello there. Hi.
So maybe you can give us like a brief introduction of yourself and maybe the communities that you're involved in.
Oh, wow. Okay. I've been in technology in Singapore for almost 20 years, and I've been running meetup groups since I can't remember how long it was, about 20, about there, quite a while. But first meetup group that I ran was a PHP user group. So the time when I was, and then later on I became an iOS developer, and then also started an iOS group with a couple of friends. It's called iOS Dev Scout. They've gotten quite big, so they even run conferences now. The PHP group I also kind of like started running conferences on top of that as well. So it's the PHP Conf Asia, which is like we've been running. We ran for 3 years, and because of COVID, we got to do a bit of stop on that. And most recently, I've been running this thing called Junior Devs Singapore. So it's like a meetup group for a support group for junior devs, junior developers in Singapore, like freshman developers coming into the industry. Other than that, I also run engineers.sg, which is like the site where you go to we used to go to meetups and record meetups and put them up online, kind of like to open source and share the content from different meetups. Yeah, that's pretty much my contribution. I mean, there are some other small things here and there, but I guess these are the main ones.
Hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more out there as well. I think like even for myself, I think one of probably the first time I sort of maybe in a volunteer setup working with Michael was during I think Tech Ladies, right? This is boot camp
Oh yes, yes, tech
6 5.
ladies.
Yeah. So that was a very fun, I would say half a year ish. Yeah. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
I think by just description, Michael has done a lot of things for the community.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Wei just now when you asked Michael to share all his communities, right? I was like, how long is this gonna take? No, are we sure we want to go there? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, so maybe let's start off by a very simple question. I think this is just to warm up today's live stream. It's also for the audience as well. This is the same format of would you rather question. We just ask a interesting question and see like what everybody's opinions are. So a few weeks ago, I believe the first question we ever asked was true love or $1 million. Now, this week we have a different one, which is more towards work. So especially, I mean, now we are all in working from home, or mostly most of us are working from home. But let's say in a more of a physical setup, which one would you prefer? Between these two options, would you prefer a longer commute every day, but lesser working hours, or would you prefer more working hours, shorter commute?
Is
Tributes.
this the part where you point to one of us, like the Googler?
I guess I maybe I'll point to myself and start first just to get the ball rolling. So it's easier to point to you, or someone will point to me later. Uh So for me, okay, I think this is going to be a little bit typical because I think someone of the four of us here, I think someone is probably going to have a huge laugh about my answer. But I think my answer is def. Okay, don't say definitely, but more on the side of more working hours and shorter commute. Um, Not so much for the more working hours side, but I have had the misfortune. Okay, I don't say misfortune, but rather like over the last 4 years, I think my commute to the workplace has always been between 1 hour to 1.5 hours. I know it's not that long compared to like I'm sure there's even longer timings out there. Like I had a friend who stays at UT and worked at Changi Airport, so that's like the worst like traveling time ever. The commute time, I mean. But even then, with 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour plus, I think is really bad. So I think I would prefer if I can take the time. I'd rather use it in like more constructive work instead. Okay, so that's my answer. I am now going to arrow Julius.
I was thinking about long commute and less work, but then when I see Way 158's answer, which is none, right? No work and no commute. I agree. I agree. That's better. um, but I think I can. I mean, I guess to kind of stick to the topic, I kind of think that less working hours is always good. The work, the commute, you can do all sorts of stuff like watch movies and so forth. But at work, it can get very tricky sometimes when it's taking too long to get things done. Um, yeah, let's see. I'm pushing Justin to speak more, so I'm going to rub on her.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of comments. I think Ku is agreeing with Wei Yuan. More impact, less commute. Um, I would have to agree. I think I would go for more work hours and shorter commute. Mainly because I stay at the north of Singapore, so going to everywhere it usually takes more than 1 hour. Yeah, and I feel like the I don't have much control when you're commuting, but when working from home, at least you can decide now what you want to do. Like you just basically more control over how you work compared to commuting. You're just being squished by people in the MRT and all. Yeah, so that's that. Over to you, Michael.
So I realized one of the nice things about having a shorter commute, or rather working from home, especially a shorter commute means you can sleep longer. Especially if I'm shorter. You have so like right now I work from home. We our daily stand up happens around 9:36, and we basically, if I have to travel to work, which is a long commute, I will end up having to wake up a lot earlier. And sometimes if don't meet a certain time of waking up, I have to get a grab, and that's very expensive. But then again, given the situation nowadays, it might be good to have less contact with people anyway. But yeah, so one of the side effects of not going to the office is that you can sleep in a bit longer, and then you won't be so rushed getting to start work. About whether I like more working hours, I don't know, man. I see, nowadays like it's not work-life balance; it's more of hybrid work. So there's a new buzzword now, so you can work anywhere. So which is a bit is you have to be very, you have to specifically draw the line at this point. After this minute of the hour, I'm no longer at work, and then you need to kind of like dif- separate yourself from that. So I think there are some ceremonies that I do. Number one is I shut down my laptop, my work laptop. That's very helpful. And yeah, so it's a bit more deliberate lah, I guess. Unlike when when you have you work in the office, you just pack your bags and leave, right? So it's a bit different. Yeah.
Did you
So
just
yes,
say
shorter
that
commute.
you have daily stand up at 9:36 a.m.?
Yep, that is
That
true.
is oddly specific. Is there a reason for that?
Okay, it goes back to my days in a consulting agency called Neo Innovation. So New Innovation at the time is actually the Singapore branch of Pivotal Labs at the time. So they adopted a lot of the practices from Pivotal Labs. One of the peculiar habits that they have was they will start their morning stand up because the whole company will come in for breakfast because they provide breakfast in the morning. So at 9:06 they would start the morning stand up where everyone drops their food, comes to the center, and kind of like a whole company stand up kind of thing. So 9:06, there were a lot of rumors about why it was 9:06 specifically. But the most canonical one, what I found, was that back in the day when Pivotal was still consulting with Google, they were having a lot of arguments about what time they should have their stand up because Pivotal was they introduced Agile to Google, and they were like trying to teach them how to do the Agile stuff, but they were always having this discussion about what time should we start a morning stand up. So Google, being Google, decided to use data, and the data they found was the reference point they used was the median travel time between rooms. So the median travel time average travel time between rooms is about 6 minutes. So in that case, let's start our meetup, or rather the morning setup at 9:06. So because I assume you end your meetup on the dot at 9 o'clock at your previous meeting, and you take 6 minutes to get to where you need to go to. So that's kind of like how it got to that lah. other urban legends I heard was also the 6 minutes travel time between from the BART station to the door of Pivotal Labs. So the BART is like the MRT of San Francisco, right? So their main office was in Market Street. So 6 minutes from the BART station to the that was another version of it. So but anyway, we came to Singapore. And my previous company, we also did something like that. It was like 9:06 is a bit too early. Let's just move a half an hour, so be 9:36. And then where I am now is like, okay, let's do that 9:36 off. Like, it's a nice time, and it seems to be okay. Yeah. Sorry, that was a long-winded way of saying it, but yes, it is interesting trivia.
That's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Okay, so maybe to jump back into, so hopefully from the audience, they have been sending in their responses as well. I'm just going to take a look before. Oh, wait, what? Long commute, less work hours. What?
Oh man,
Okay. I'm not going to.
I think they're
just gonna.
optimizing for optimizing for less work hours.
In some sense, actually, I kind of also agree with this. Like when I was forced to do that long commute, at least you have that time to just do whatever you want on the train, read. Like I think there was one point of time I just spent like 1 week worth of commute to just finish like this one book. Which I guess works somewhat, but it only works for like limited. Like I don't think I was able to replicate that same thing over and over again. But what do you guys think about this?
I think it's reasonable, right? Like, no one wants to become a slave of capitalism. So you want to have less work, you know, you want to have long commute and enjoy life. Watch your next episode of Squid Game.
Squid Game. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think let's go to the main part of our discussions for today. So I am going to bring up question number 1. Okay, so I think this question is directed towards Michael, but I think also, we can circle through for all of us as well, because I think for each one of us, actually we probably have been volunteers at different levels. Okay, so I think for the audience, right, who, perhaps some of us might not have volunteered at all before, probably they're also curious about how we got started. I am going to, okay, maybe I'll arrow Michael first. I think probably this, yeah,
Sure.
interesting
How
stories.
did I get started in volunteering in tech? So I think many years. I mean, where do I start this story? So there were kind of like two parts of my past life that I kind of like draw inspiration from. Number one was as a Christian back in as a Christian. We previously we had a lot of cell groups, and we find that the cell groups was a very integral way in which people could find like-minded people and kind of encourage each other in the faith. So I wanted to replicate something like that in the technology world, and especially when I was working in the tech world, I'm the only tech guy in the company because I was running. I was either running my own business at the time or working in a digital agency. So it's kind of like I'm probably the only software developer in the house. So in a way, you seek friends and like-minded individuals who share your ideas. So that's the first thing. So the idea of like wanting to find people who can encourage you. The second part of my life, which is still, it's still quite relevant for me, is the idea of open source. Open source means the more you share, the more you get back, right? So because of that idea that you want to find people who can encourage you, and you want to find people who are willing to share ideas and share knowledge. So with this being an inspiration, I was like, okay, let's try and find people who are like-minded in that way, lah. And believe it or not, when you do go for meetup, you do feel very encouraged by people who share similar background and even tell you things that make you feel, oh, I'm not alone in this struggle, right? So it's kind of nice to have that kind of reflected energy from people that you work with, and then because you're not doing it for money, You're doing it because you really do like this career. You really feel that this work that we do has meaning, and you really want to get better at what you do, right? So you essentially you want to make that belief also real for the people around you, especially for people who are joining the industry for the first time. It's really somehow they're like all alone, or rather they only have the people in their class they can talk to and stuff like that. So you want to really tell them, hey, there's a bigger group out here. And I think the best way to do this is to just volunteer my time and let people know that we can organize things. And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of good speakers who came forward, and even sponsors who can sponsor venue and even food, for this kind of things. So yeah.
Just curious of one part. So I think just now when you introduced yourself, you mentioned that was that you founded the initial PHP communities in Singapore, right? So okay, maybe just to more as a confirmation. I think before this experience, did you volunteer with a different community, or was that like as you started out, this community was the first one that you created as part of your
Okay.
volunteering stack?
So actually, I think I have a lot to benefit from the other. I think we all stand on the shoulders of giants. I think that's the right term. So at the time, there was a big. At the time when I was doing this, when I was new in the industry and stuff, there were also a lot of students who were involved in this thing called the NUS Overseas College. Do you have heard of them? NOC. So I guess a lot of the big startup in Singapore, like Carousel and what's that? The other property, 99 Co, for example, they were all alumni from NOC, and when they so basically NOC lets NUS students spend some time overseas in the Silicon Valley, in many parts of seven cities in the US, and even in I think Sweden and some other countries. Basically, they were sent overseas to basically learn about the culture there and maybe bring some of the culture back to Singapore. So the fellows who went to SF, basically, they really got into the idea that technology and startups is a really big thing. They brought the idea back to Singapore and they tried to build something here. And one of the things that started was this thing called Entrepreneur 27. So which eventually became E27. And there was also a few other groups. There was another one called the Digital Movement, TDM. So these are the few that were student groups, student-run groups. They were very prominent. They were like trying to bring the same Silicon Valley culture back in Singapore and try to create like buzz. And groups like TDM and E27 started running conferences as well. E27 at the time ran the Unconference, which eventually became Echelon. So and I was involved in one of the earlier echelons. It was called Unconference at the time. It was still called Unconference at the time. Probably 2007 or something. So I was involved in one of the conferences, because at the time I was running a podcast. I was like doing this podcast, trying to tell people about gears and stuff. And I went there and record one of the talks there, which was one of the speakers there was actually a good friend of mine. His name is Yuzin. So he basically also started this group. He also started this group called this website called ping.sg. Ping.sg is like a aggregator of bloggers. So in a way, in the early days, there were bloggers who were involved in some of these student groups, and the student groups were actually doing a lot of these activities. And from these groups, there were also other meetup groups that were starting. So it's like we have old school technologists who wanted to do like Java user group and all that other things. At the time, there was also this group, the Ruby Brigade, which eventually became the Ruby user group. They call them Ruby Brigade lah. So it's weird. Anyway, so so they were doing this. There was also these small technology groups. So there were students that were interested in this. There were bloggers that were willing to live. They were live blogging at those events, and that created a lot of buzz around this. And then we have these technologists who are willing to share ideas, and all this kind of came together. And I got inspired by all these people. Like the first meetup I organized for the PHP user group. Essentially, I went to at the time there was. When I started the PHP user group, I didn't know how to promote it. So when I first meet up, it was like 2-3 people in the bar talking. It was quite lonely. but I wanted to try and see how I can improve it. So at the time, E27 was doing the Facebook Developer Garage. If you're not familiar, at the time, Facebook, when they first launched the API, they wanted to try and promote the use of it. Well, rather, they didn't actually promote it, but these students, the student group E27 was keen on making it a thing. So they basically did a Facebook Developer Garage, and because Facebook is written in PHP, I went there kind of like, hey, can I make an announcement? Hey, I run the PHP user group. Here's my name card, and here's my Facebook group, and all that stuff. And some people start joining, and at that time, I wanted to have a meetup, so I thought, okay, let's create a meetup, on Facebook, and it was suddenly got 50 over people signing up, and I was like, shit, I have a good problem. I don't have a venue. I don't have speakers. So I was like, okay, maybe I should tap on my network of friends, which I basically found my friends from the Ruby group, Ruby Brigade, and say, which is where all this network kind of became instrumental. You find friends, and friends became your network, and they can help you find other people can help you. So I got involved. I got in touch with my friends from the Ruby Brigade and say, hey, you guys have a meetup at SMU, right? Would you be able to introduce me someone there who can, let us host a meetup there? And they somehow got me in touch with the Object-Oriented Programming Society in SMU, and and he told me, hey, yeah, sure, they will host us there. So we had our first meetup. I got people a couple of my friends who speak, and I spoke on PHP, and it was like the room was like filled with people and everything. It was very energetic, and so basically we had a lot of groups there at the time, student groups. We have technologies who still has a lot of fire in their belly, like the Linux user group and Ruby group and Java user group are still around. I think the current incarnation of Java user group is a bit different, but back then there were a lot of these small groups that would use mailing lists as a way of communicating and stuff, which is still effective. And much later on, much later when I would start doing more of this, there were also other things that started sprouting up. Like Hackerspace was one of those interesting things that appeared. So Hackerspace became like a gathering point for a lot of these technologists and people who are in. So basically, it's a melting pot of here we have the startup folks who want to look for technologists. Here's a bunch of open source folks that are really into technology, and they kind of got into the same place, and they kind of got a lot of good ideas. One of the interesting people or startups that came out of Hackerspace, for example, was Viki. Raspik at the time was actually working out of Viki, working out of Hackerspace, and that's how he got in touch with all of the local technologies folks at the time. So it was interesting. There's one of the things how all these things seem to come together. Then we have companies who are willing to open up the space, and it's just success. One success led to more success and more community and more. It's like the whole open source mantra: the more you give, the more you get back. So it's kind of like that.
That's interesting. I never knew that about the portion where you talk about Viki. I never heard about that before. Wow. So it was born Raspik was doing it in Hackerspace?
Yeah.
At the point of time?
Yeah. I
And
mean, that time
the-
he didn't have an office yet, so he was using Hackerspace as his base of operation or something. So yeah.
I'm gonna ask a few of my colleagues after this. Oh, I guess I never really asked about that before. I didn't know about this. Oh, this is really interesting. Okay, maybe to also okay, I'm gonna arrow, I guess, Julius next. Can you let us know about how you came into volunteering in the tech community?
I think nothing as much as Michael. In my case, I sort of started volunteering mostly in the COVID season. Mostly because we sort of felt that there's a gap that we wanted to fill, similar to how Michael kind of described also, but in a much smaller scale. Um, Specifically, we felt that Singapore is moving towards a situation whereby we need more and more engineering leaders, and we felt that, or at least I felt that we don't have enough resource and kind of close knit group to kind of talk about all these engineering leadership topics, which would eventually become very important for this country, especially that now you have companies like Grab, companies like what else, Spenmo, Carousel, these companies that have been growing so much, that we want to have a more sustainable tech industry in this country, and hence being able to actually like kind of raise and train the next generation of engineering leaders would be uh, good for everyone, and also moving out to the region, right? Like Malaysia, Vietnam, all those places. Hence, I kind of felt that it's something that we can uh, tap on. And very similar to Michael, also like friends, friends of friends, people come in and refer people who wants to talk about all sorts of things, and sometimes it's also if I have certain questions that I need some answers to, right, then I will go and ask people to actually talk about it because somebody else might have the same question. So nothing as grand as Michael, of course, but I think that's roughly my own life. I would like to hear about Jason.
Yeah.
The short answer, I guess, is because it's related to my work. So, like, I basically got involved in the developer space. Yeah, when I joined the Google team, right? But after a while, yeah, I think like I think a lot of people are sharing about how it's paying it forward. So as community volunteers, I mean, we don't get paid and all, but yeah, it was really encouraging to see how like a lot of people are still taking time to really out of their work, go and look for speakers to help other people in the community. Yeah, and then recently I came across this mentoring platform called Future Lab. Yeah, and so it's basically like a mentor-mentee platform. And I think one of the problems that we always see is that we don't have enough female mentors or women speakers. So yeah, I decided, let's do a part in changing that. So yeah, I started getting involved in that. Yeah, that's the short story. Wei Yuan, what about you?
I'm just gonna pause here very quickly and say that I got distracted by Michael's cat. can, can you show us the cat? Usually I like to ask that of the guests as well. Oh.
Is this the part where we ask the name of the cat?
Oh yeah, the cat's name is Yuan Bao.
Oh.
Wow.
He looks like gold bullions. I mean, you can't see it, but his fur is quite yellowish. Yeah. Oh, carry on, please.
Was expecting some tech names like a floating point or double decimal.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question. Avoiding this question. Okay, but maybe I'll give a short answer for this for mine. Um, there's a funny story and there's a not funny story. The funny story is I got saboed for volunteering for tech. This was when I was working with Vicky. Um, okay, maybe in some sense it's not really volunteering, but it's more like a tech speaker. So I remember one day, one of our hiring staff right just came over to me and said, okay, you're going to speak for this conference. And then she walked away. And I couldn't say no. So I end up speaking for that. That was the ever first time I spoke at the event as well. But I think maybe to sum up the points that has been mentioned so far, I think Jiaxing mentioned about certain organizations that you can go to in terms of volunteering. I think Julius is also involved with that. I think later on probably we'll also explore more on this. But to touch on more also on the point that both Julius and Michael mentioned, right? In terms of connections as well. I think in the tech community, I think that's what I really like about it. It's so close knitted. If you want to do volunteering, possibly you already have like a few friends who are involved in a community. You just need to go and find either you go to a meetup group, meet new friends, or maybe you go through your friends to get introduced to the group and start volunteering. And that's how I actually started volunteering for GDG Cloud Singapore. Yeah. And also like maybe a slightly awkward like during one of the events, I think I just went up and tell them, yeah, I just want to continue to do more. Then they just said yes. Yeah. Okay, so origin stories is done. So let's go on to the next part. I think maybe to give objective views to the newcomers, for people, maybe most of the fresh grads or maybe your first few years in your industry, perhaps they're interested in becoming a volunteer. So what pros and cons would you give, in terms of having like done tech volunteering for some time? Maybe this time round, I will go for Julius first.
Oh dear. the most difficult part of being the first person to answer is you don't get to think about the answer.
Or
um,
maybe I can start first. Um, so okay, pros. So I have thought about this for a little bit before. Pros, definitely there is some level of it will help to at some levels boost your career a little bit. I mean, okay, to be very objective, and I mean not trying to be like, what's the right word for this, materialistic? I don't know. But essentially to be very objective, yes, it will be somewhat of a good move for you in terms of getting more people to know you. Like not just volunteering, if you do tech speaking as well, you get yourself out there. Possibly it's going to be easy for you if you want to go and find maybe, let's say, a future job. You can put it as part of your resume. But then beyond that, like, the very materialistic benefit, there's also other benefits, like you get to know more people in your industry. I think you're not just the only one alone where you're going to office every day working and then you go home after that. There's so much more to the tech industry than just doing that. And by going to these different meetup events, I think I learned a lot from different speakers. Organizing them as well, you get this first-hand experience talking to this speaker. So perhaps you even get more time with them to ask your own questions. Yeah. So these are the few benefits. Okay, not up to 3, but these are the few that I have. Cons, I have one that I'll say right away. It will burn your time. I mean, it's important if you are thinking about volunteering for tech to understand how much time you want to put into it. Um, I think for myself, there have been periods of time where I deep dive into it. I just spent a lot of time doing it. I remember there was this period where every 2 weeks I'm just doing an event back to back, back to back, back to back. Um, yeah, and it was quite tiring lah. So of course I was prepared to put my time into it. So I've already allocated time aside to do the prep, participate in the event, all that. But towards the end, I realized that, okay, maybe I don't want to go to that scale. Okay, let's pull back a little bit. Yeah. So that's one con, I would say. Not so much of a con, but rather you need to think a little bit first, like how much time you want to put into this and then commit to those. Like if you have already mentioned to a community that you want to volunteer for them, make sure you also put that time in. Like don't just go in halfway and then not help, like disappear for half the time. I think that's also not very nice. Yeah. Okay, now the arrow goes back to Julius.
Wow, when I heard you talk about every 2 weeks you have to run an event, that sounds like big O. No, I'm kidding, I'm
It's
kidding, I'm
it's
kidding, no. um, um, I think it's very similar to what you said, right? Like, I think it's about the fulfillment of being able to help people. That one really is priceless, right? Like, it's an area that I think we tend to have more, how should I say, more knowledge on, areas in tech. We are probably as clueless as pretty much anyone in things like marketing. But in terms of tech, at least we have one or two things that we can help others. It kind of creates that fulfillment, and also for us to be able to actually learn as well. For example, there are a lot of times where without the community, right, I don't think I would have learned how to solve certain problems that the community actually was able to help me out because they have solved a similar problem before that I'm running into or I'm about to run into in the future. So I think that one is another useful thing in volunteering. Likewise, also, I think I did mention earlier that if I do have questions, running an online community also helps me actually find the right people who have answers to those questions. Hence, I get to learn as well. And because I have that question, for sure somebody else has the same question, so it kind of gets solved along the way as well. But on the other hand, also you did mention that you pay for volunteering with your time, right? So I think it's also one of the major cons. There's always a price to pay. There's no free lunch, so uh, yeah, I have to pay with my true love. Right now, there's no jewelries yet. Very sad, but see how. Passing it to Michael.
Cool. I think I agree on the networking and the aspect of, I guess, okay, as you do volunteer work, you get in front of people get to recognize you and they get to talk to you, and sometimes you do also make a lot of good friends, and sometimes you also realize, oh wow, this guy will be great in my company. So there are times that you get to get introduced to people, and in fact, the way I got into my last company at SP Digital was because I basically was called up by someone and say, hey, we need someone like you in our company. That okay, where do I sign up? Anyway, but it's interesting because in SP Digital, because Sao Xiong was quite a bit of a character, and he really knows has a sort of reputation of running really good engineering outfit. It's really sincere and serious about running engineering teams. And so he was able to call up a lot of folks in the community. It's like the first time I'm working with a lot of people that I already know in the industry. As people like Soup, who is my co-organizer in the iOS Dev Scout at the time. So I never worked with him personally, but here I am working in the same company as him. It was interesting experience. He runs the iOS team, and I was like helping with the processes and shit. And yeah, we had great fun. People like Sayani Basu, and who I've known for many years as a blogger and then as a researcher. And then she came when he joined the company. We had a few things that we worked on together. One of them was Geek Branch, and then the other thing that we worked on was the Geek Path. If you have not heard about that one, it's a kind of like we came up like a manifesto for what it means to be geek. Like the Geek Path, you could check it out. Anyway, so like it's interesting to get to work with people that that the opportunity is there, to work with people and see people. The recognition is there. Of course, you also get very tired doing this, because you do spend long hours sometimes with this. But sometimes that's why sometimes when we do organizing of events, we also try to reward the people that volunteer with us. Like for example, when I ran a conference, I think we want to make sure that the folks who volunteer are also taken care of. They're well fed, and we definitely want to have an after party where you have plenty of things to drink, plenty of food to eat. So it's like in a way I want to make sure that they're rewarded. And there were also times when, because Engineers SG was kind of making a little bit of money from our YouTube ads and stuff, so I was able to use some of the funds to bring the volunteers of Engineers SG for a dinner. And we had one of our volunteers who was going away to US for for half a year for some study work trip, and we knew he was vegetarian, so we kind of we need to bring him to the best vegetarian place in town. So and then of course we did a farewell party as well. Also we did a gathering of sorts for all the volunteers. So in a way, I also we want to work hard. We also want to make sure that we help each other, we help them, and help everyone feel that their work is recognized. And it's just the part of me being a leader, trying to make sure the folks that volunteer with me, who put their time into this, don't feel shortchanged. But I've actually not really heard much complaints from people, but they do tend to be very taxing. Because for example, when we run when engineers actually go out to record a conference, the entire day you're just there recording setting up you go there early, set up the equipment, you record the event, and your time is spent more on focusing on the equipment, making sure that it doesn't fail, rather than listening to the content. So yeah, but there are some people who can multitask. So there are some folks that in the past where me and myself included, I go to conference for free because I was recording the event, and therefore I was able to listen for free, to attend and listen for free and learn from the content. So in a way, as a volunteer, you also are able to spend extra time with the people, the event organizers, the speakers, and I recommend you go check out Yo King Ming's blog. Yo King Ming, he has a blog post where he talked about his time volunteering as Engineers SG, and a few other volunteer activities, and he has a very good post about what pros and cons about this. I'll try and find the link and share with you all later.
Okay, so maybe I'll jump in at this point to also mention that, for the audience as well, if you have any questions, about volunteering itself, you're curious to ask about Michael, do put them in the comments. If we see them, we'll try and surface them up. Okay, but I think the question so far, so maybe also to add on to what Michael mentioned, I think one extra thing that I learned as an event organizer, which is, I think maybe this is more pertaining towards Engineers SG, who helps to film events, especially in the future if we have physical events as well. For event organizers, do reserve some swags for those guys who help to film. These guys come from the earliest, like they come in the morning to help to film like some of the full day events, and they leave like they're the last to leave as well. So they enter and leave about the same time as the organizers. So as much as possible, sometimes like things like swags or even like meals do try to like help reserve for them. So that make things easier for them lah. And I realized that really helps to make their day as well. Okay, but on a big part of what Michael mentioned, right? I think I'm really curious, and perhaps like for the event organizers who's watching this, probably they're also curious about this, which is, how do you sustain the lifeline or lifeline? I guess like the keep your community going. Like, how do you make sure that as you have the people who graduate from the volunteer group, you have new blood coming in and keeping them motivated. I think this is really something that I'm really interested to find out about, given that you have success in so many different efforts that you have founded.
I don't know. There are many definitions of success. So for me, I don't know whether my volunteering things is very successful. I don't know, but but the impact is, there's no question about the impact. The question was more of the question of the sustainability of my meetups, my groups. So for example, for Engineers SG, even though we do have a lot of volunteers who help us with the recording, and I've trained many people. I've trained about 50, 60 over volunteers because I run training programs on a regular basis last time. So I would on Saturday meet them at Hackerspace, spend 3-4 hours going through them how to do the equipment setup, how to do the recording, So just to prepare them and get them ready, right? And then I will try to pair them up with someone who has more experience, and then they pair on the recording together so they get onboarded eventually. But of the 50 plus 60 over people that I've trained, the real active ones or continuously doing it, there's only a handful. So even though I do recruit or do a lot of training, but the attrition rate is also fairly high. So I can't recognize that because this is volunteers, and I have a sort of a duty roster. I try to help them, give them opportunities to volunteer by setting up a duty roster that they can fill up. Okay, I can make it for this meetup. I can make it this meetup. I can make it for this meetup, and they will all basically go for those meetups, and they will try their best to record lah. But then there are still people who after 1 or 2 times they felt that wow, it's just quite stressful. Some were willing to continue going, which is great. So I also try my best to reward them and help them as best as I can. But the nature of it being a volunteer outfit, because there's no way you can give them monetary rewards. So you have to find other ways to reward them, which is in some of these cases would be time with the speakers, time with the organizers, getting the network of people and all that stuff. So and even free conferences they can go to, which is nice. So yeah, and another thing that in Junior Dev SG, I try to kind of create a stint, a concept of a stint. So I get you in as organizers, and I will basically your stint with us will be a year, right? And after 1 year, I'll give you the option. Do you want to continue? If you want to continue, it's fine. We'll get people to replace you. If you want to continue, then we'll continue going on with this. So there's a concept of I'm not going to do this forever, right? So that's some very good thing. Sometimes also it's very helpful to kind of create programs, sub-programs. Like in Junior Dev SG, we actually have three large programs that we run. The monthly meetup, we have this thing called Developers Gym that we come together to do coding and stuff like that, and also have a mentoring program. So these are so when I try to organize it to make verticals like this, it tends to help people gravitate towards this. Oh, I'm interested in this and this, or I just want to focus on this, right? So which is helpful. And then you just get them together, and then so it's the idea that you also don't want to waste their time. So in a way, when I organize a event or a mentoring program, I don't demand them to continue carry on with us. There's also a time limit. Let's say after 6 sessions of the mentoring, you're done, right? We don't need to come back, and we'll do another round of recruitment for a new round. So if they're willing to come back, which is great. If they don't, then it's okay. I mean, thank you for your service, thank you for your time, and it's really I really appreciate those who have. So it's you don't. I mean, what I'm trying to say is volunteerism isn't a forever thing. So if you there are seasons in our lives, and there are certain seasons that you just want to contribute a bit. There are seasons you just want to rest and do other things, which is fine. And I think I want to respect that. And even myself right now during COVID time, I'm not trying as hard as I should, but it's just, like the meetups that I run, we pretty much have been on a hiatus for a while also because there's a fair bit of Zoom fatigue. So you do your day-to-day work, you do a lot of Zoom conferences and Skype calls and whatnot, and then I don't know lah. But after office hours, you really just want to kind of disconnect for a while. So I don't know. It's a bit. I really applaud those who are still carrying on. The Ruby group is one of those that keeps continuing to do meetups. The Java user group is also nothing to do meetups. That keeps doing meetup. The data science group is another group. So I find maybe, for example, the science is an example of the data science group, and maybe even yourself in your current setup, is find people that are willing to work with you on this, like-minded individuals, like the Java user group. Michael actually has the other Michael has a lot of volunteers who help him. They just, some of them are his colleagues, and it's very interesting. They just encourage each other and keep going. Another group I've seen is a group called Tequila. No, they don't drink tequila. it basically stands for Test Automation Quality Engineering La. Yeah, so there's a group out there called Tequila. I mean, they have a naming contest internally. It came up with their name. So anyway, but it's interesting. So they have a WhatsApp group where they are very active, and there are people who are willing to. So basically, getting people together. What I talked about earlier on about reflected energy, having people in the same room, having people who are willing to hey, I want to do this. Let's do this. Hey, you can find when you find like-minded individuals. There's a lot of energy. They can play with each other and really help each other shine brighter. So I think that's is important. Like even right now in this, you like three of you are continuing to do this on a regular basis. I think that's great. I mean, and finding people who are willing to help and work with you, I think that's important. And you find someone like them, it's like a gem. Just keep them around, polish them, and help them shine, and that's important. Yeah.
Oh, so inspiring, Michael. Now I feel like we can continue volunteering for the next 1 to 2 years. But yeah, thanks a lot for sharing about. I think what was really interesting is the life cycle of like an organizer. Getting the expectations that it's not forever. I have another question, which is related to this. So, sometimes when organizers start meet up, and then the founding members they may be like really excited because it's their vision. But I think a lot of times when transitioning it to the next generation, that's when the next generation may not feel as motivated, or maybe for the first few months, they feel like they can do it, but afterwards it gets really tiring. So yeah, what are some qualities that you look for when you are looking for community leads? And have you encountered this kind of situations? And what do you suggest? What advice do you have?
Let's see. This is not something I've solved yet. Let's put it this way. I've not really solved it. So, like for example, I don't want to name names, but the PHP user group is one good example, which I have started many years ago, and I tried to kind of hand off to the next generation, and due to circumstances and whatnot, then I think it's a bit unrealistic to expect whoever's taking over to run at the same level as you. There could be there could be other examples. Otherwise, there could be people who you choose and pick, and they are energetic and they continue to run this as well as you do. One good example is the iOS user group. Even though Soup, myself, and Mugun started it like years ago, I'm no longer an iOS developer, so I decided to step away. But Subransu, he has continued running it, and he has actually managed to find people who are willing to engage at the same level as him. So how he found them, I think it's just that his passion for that for that is really obvious, and somehow like attract like, and you manage to find people who are willing to kind of energize or even, or rather, work at the same level, which is great. And another good example I've seen is tech ladies. If you look at tech ladies, they started out as just a boot camp, but in recent times, Elisha has actually gathered around. She did a recruitment drive of sorts, and she was able to find a lot of interesting people who are willing to help, and they've started branching out into various areas like they have blogging. They have like they have events that they run, and of course, on top of the boot camp, they still carries on. There are many other things that they would that they can continue. So it's like I think in a way, I think she gives freedom to the group to kind of like, hey, I've done this, but what other ideas do you have? You want that, let them take ownership of those initiatives. So that's something interesting. So in a sense, I think as a meetup group, we tend to be technology and presentation, right? Presentation by speakers, and that's it. So, but there can be many other formats, and sometimes you want to let the next generation explore, and they may not feel that what we're doing previously might be what they resonate with, and they might want to try different things. And I think as a leaders in the industry, we want to encourage them, and we want to encourage them, and want to make sure that we don't try. I mean, like sometimes as an old fogey, I'll say, yeah, that one won't work one, but we try not to do that. And I think I've tried that before, but it may not have worked. But go ahead, maybe it might work for you. Some things like that. So as long as you encourage them and give them and let them take ownership, I think that's important. There is about ownership. There's also the flip side of it, which is maybe the time and season of that group has come and gone. There could also be the outcome. As in the end of the day, people are just not that interested in this technology anymore, or perhaps we're just not as relevant as we used to be, or whatever. It could be many reasons. So because of that, maybe it's good to let it die a natural death, and you go on to other things. So each generation have their own magic and their way of doing things, and you want to encourage them to also start new things. One very interesting one was there's a group that does a React meetup in house at Shopee. Yeah, and there's a lot of young people there. They were actually running it very well as an internal thing. It was only in recent years that they started to open up to let other people go to the meetup and stuff. I think I can't remember the name of the group. I think React something. I can't remember. But it's one of those you can find a video on engineers.sg. So cool a bit. But anyway. but essentially there could be surprises, and there could be things that come that the new technology stack that people might be interested in, and people may be going through different channels. There are some people that just want to just share ideas, and I know this guy who just runs a Svelte. I think he does a YouTube video series on Svelte, which is a JavaScript framework. So it's very interesting. So I mean, there are other ways of doing it, and I've seen probably there are many ideas out there which I personally may not have the energy and time to explore. But I really encourage the younger generation, and even people who still have a lot of energy to push the boundaries.
Oh, thanks a lot for sharing that. Yeah, I think a lot of great advice for all the organizers who are watching this as well.
Just now the community you mentioned, is it React Knowledgeable or something
Yes,
like that?
correct. Yes, React Knowledgeable. So it started as a in-house meetup group in Shopee, and then they kind of like open up to the rest of the world, which is interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so we are running a bit low on time. I'm going to jump to maybe the last few questions. Unfortunately, I think time passes very fast while we're having fun. But okay, so I think to give a bit more perspective to the audience as well, maybe some advice from you guys in terms of beyond volunteering in, let's say, meetups, tech communities. If someone is maybe like not not keen to the idea of that, what other alternatives would you all recommend them to go towards? I'm just gonna go first and say open source. Okay, then I'll arrow next person. Easy answer.
Blogging. That's right.
Blogging and
Uh,
speaking as well, right? Speaking is also
Blogging,
good. Understand.
speaking, podcasts. I think these are some of the interesting things you can try.
Mm. How about Julius and Jiaxing? I think both of you all have done this. What's that? A mentoring organization, right? Two different mentoring organizations.
Yeah, I was actually going to say probably more along the lines of like, if we are working in a company, right, we will tend to have people who are younger than us who are, kind of on the lookout of someone to actually help them kind of, kind of speed up their career, kind of help them bypass certain hurdles that we ourselves have run into and wish that had we known it earlier, we wouldn't have done the same. I think that especially for interns, right, they are very hungry to learn. So it's a very good opportunity to actually, take a step back and say, hey, like, I know you're an intern, you're here in this company. I'd like to help you. Like just kind of walk with them, maybe have a monthly session with them, kind of help them out with all sorts of decisions that they have to kind of figure out in the company. It doesn't have to be a community, but you're investing in someone else's lives, and you can actually see the benefit. I think, as what Michael said also, things that you actually the seeds that you plant, right, will eventually blossom in so many different ways that you don't expect.
Mm.
So I think that could be something to try also.
Yeah, totally agree with what Julia shared. I think sometimes people may also not be comfortable sharing a presentation, maybe in the past to like a large group of people, but now maybe things are easier because it's just you are looking at a camera and talking. But some people, if they are not comfortable presenting, which is most of the time still what a typical meetup format is. I think mentoring would really it would be interesting to try it out because most of the time it's one-on-one, so it's really like chatting with another person.
So I actually did something interesting a couple of years ago, and especially during COVID time, I think it's probably more relevant. So one of the things I did was I created this place where people can arrange a one-on-one with me. They can basically have a one-on-one time with me, and then I can spend an hour with you. Let's talk about your career, talk about professional development, talk about whatever. So that's one of the things I did. So an extension of that was a one-on-one time, but not just talking, or but also pair programming. So that's one of my little passions is I love to code and I love to do pair programming. I like to evangelize the whole world about how awesome pair programming is. And there was a time where when I was in between jobs, I was like, okay, I need to let's try this. So I did set up a little calendar. People could book my time. They spend 2 hours with me, and it was like, let's do some pair programming together and teach them what is TDD, what is pair programming, what is TDD, and all that stuff. So it was like it really kind of works into there's a side passion what I have, which is teaching. So I like to teach. So and that was an interesting way for me to do that. I have it in one of my Dev2 blogs. I have a few posts there, so you can check it out.
I think those are really interesting. Oh, go ahead, Jiaxing.
Are you gonna bring it back, Michael, for the people who are watching if they want to set up a one-on-one time with you?
Sure. I mean, I did it actually during the COVID, early in the COVID time when we could still meet people. So of course I was like feeling kind of isolated at home. I was like got really a bit bored, and I just okay, fine. Let's let people organize and arrange one-on-ones with me lah. And it was interesting. I got to meet a lot of very interesting people, strangers. People. I even had one where there was one lady who I did a remote one-on-one with, and I kind of taught her a bit about pair programming and TTTD. And she was like switching she's like a mid-career switcher. So she went through this boot camp, and because I talked about it on my this one-on-one thing on my Twitter, she booked a time, and she basically called in. She's based in I think SF or something, somewhere in US. So she basically phoned in, and we kind of had a chat. Last I heard, she actually found a job in the industry. At the time, she was still like picking up the skill, and now she's working in the industry, and I think she's doing quite well. So it's kind of one of those interesting things. There was also a time when, because I use WeWork as a base of operation for my pair programming thing. So, and then as a way of like giving back to WeWork, I also let the incubator space folks kind of like book an hour of my time. So I got to speak to some of the CTOs there. And it was interesting because a lot of them were like freshy CTOs, the first time being a engineering manager, running a team, and I was kind of like just talking because I honestly I've actually not led a team myself, but I have some experience and seen how people could run engineering teams. So I was like talking to him, "Hey, so how's your hiring practice? How do you find?" And they were asking me things like, "How do I find good talent? What should I look for in a engineering interview and stuff like that?" So I just give because of my time spent doing hiring back at SP Digital, I was able to like uh, give them some notes about okay, what to look for in an engineer, what to find, what are the signals that are good, and stuff like that. So it's just like it's interesting. You get to also mentor and talk to up and coming CTOs, which is kind of interesting.
Hey, thanks for all the answers. I think there's a lot of what's that different. I think to sum up this question, I think there's a lot of different platforms that has been mentioned so far. Though, so if I mean volunteering for a meetup group, to do conferences, tech conferences and all that, right? It's just one way of doing it. So if you are not keen on those, you could try out other different ways. But definitely, I think what's mentioned, over here, things like if you are, for example, if you are a very senior engineer, you haven't done like I've knew a few of senior engineers who haven't done like open source before, in a long time. But maybe that's not what you are good. Maybe you want to go into doing mentoring. Mentoring could be something that you could help in contributing back. Okay, so moving from there, I think let's go into our last question for today. So more advice towards our audience over here. What advice would you give towards maybe let's say for the people who are looking towards to volunteer for a group, and also any advice for the tech leads, or I mean the leaders of those event organizers who are leading their own communities right now.
Just do it. No, I mean, it's a lot easier to get stuff started nowadays. I mean, getting started is one thing, promoting it is another thing, lah. But you can always, but there are people they can reach out to who can help you start a fire. So, not in the literal sense, please. We're not arsonists. But yeah, but there are definitely ways you can get the word out. I mean, one way is basically you attend other meetups and say, hey, I've got this other meetup I'm doing, or there's also some Telegram chats you can check out. One of them is the DevSG Telegram chat. And that's actually a very interesting place for you to go hang out and meet people in the tech industry. The quality of the conversation tends to fluctuate, but hang in there, you'll find some interesting people. Yeah, so I think just get started and try to find people who can help you kind of like get the word out as well. So I think it's important you start something, and I think one other thing you probably want to do first is actually search out other communities that might be doing the same thing as you. So before you just do it, just check out first, right? Like when I did the first PHP meetup, I was like very careful. Like, are there already PHP meetups in Singapore? I was like, there has to be. So there were two. But they started and they fizzled out or they didn't continue. So I was like, okay, since there's no active one now, maybe I just start one and see what happens. Yeah. So same thing when I did the junior dev. It's like there's a gap there's a people that's underserved, right? A bunch of folks that because of the many boot camps and all the promotion around like tech career being awesome new thing, and which is still true, and and there's just a lot of junior developers who are coming in the industry, but there some of them are okay, some of them are quite clueless, and I think I felt there was a need for this group to be served, and I wanted to figure out how, and I stumbled on one of my friends was tweeting about this group called the Junior Developers .io, which is down in Australia. So I kind of approached them. Hey, you're doing this junior dev thing. That's pretty cool. Do you think I can kind of like adopt that name for the Singapore one as well? Like open your Singapore chapter, which we did. We opened the Singapore chapter. We are the Singapore chapter of the JuniorDev.io. Of course, they also started other chapters in Melbourne, Sydney, and a few other places in Australia, in New Zealand, and in Paris. I think they were trying to do something. In Malaysia as well, they started a junior dev as well. So it's like just find out things that you could kind of get into, and if that doesn't work, then build your own.
Maybe to echo what Michael mentioned in terms of just do it and checking around, I think, but more at the level of individual contributors lah. Like I think I do agree with those similar sentiments at that level as well, where if you're looking at volunteering, do check around first, find the community that you are most aligned with. Like for example, if I'm like a DevOps engineer, like don't go for like maybe a unrelated domain, go for something that is most aligned to yours. So I mean, this is probably something that you will be interested in, meeting the speakers as well, meeting the people that come for your events too. So I think that's something that find the right alignment. That's very important. Just do it. I also agree with that sense. Maybe to tag on a little bit of, if you're an individual contributor, you're not that sure from the start, maybe start small first, maybe ask around, see if you can help out in small ways. Probably like in these different communities, usually there isn't from my understanding, usually there might not be a very defined structure, especially if, let's say, the community is smaller. But you coming in, that gives you sort of the flexibility to also maybe suggest, I can help out maybe with this. I feel that I can do this a bit better. And then that probably can allow you to start contributing from there. And once you get more comfortable, probably you can expand and do more following on from there. Okay, I'm gonna arrow like what this side.
I did not expect to have to answer this question. Julius, you can go first.
I was going to say, is this the part where like we recruit people and let them know that we have dev space, and then they can kind of volunteer at dev space, and then like dev space has all the communities in Singapore that they can arrow.
Yes. Yeah, we will show our website later on. Okay. Yeah, what I remember what I wanted to say. I think having a team would really help, so that you are not the sole organizer and you have to carry the stress and burden all on yourself. If you just find one other person, it will also help to encourage you as you go on this journey together.
Yeah, I think I don't have much to add actually, apart from saying that like I'm pretty sure Michael is more than happy to for people to kind of ask him if they could volunteer in many of his his events and his meetups, and also for sure Jasin would like to have people also kind of reach out to her and kind of see how they can help and volunteer. So I'm pretty sure after this event we can share details on how they can reach out to you, because I think those are probably two of the best places that they can reach out and kind of get in touch.
I just want to say that this event was not an advertisement for us to recruit people, but happy accident, I guess. Someone pointed out. But yeah, if you're keen to volunteer, I think there's all these communities out there. Do reach out. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're going a little bit over time, but thanks for the participation, I think, from all the speakers here today. I think this was a really engaging session. And also, I think more specifically towards Michael, I think when I thought about the theme for this event, I think the first person I thought in my mind was you. I think you're a great inspiration to the tech community in Singapore, and a lot of us love what you're doing. So I think you will say something.
Thank you.
Okay, stay awesome, I guess. So thanks for joining us today for this event, and hope to see you sometime, hopefully during a physical event. I think of course not that soon, but maybe sometime next year if things open up. Definitely I'm keen to see Michael and probably the rest of like people from the different tech communities. Okay, so I guess see you, Michael.
Bye.
Okay, so I'm gonna share our slide. So we're ending off today's event, but don't go away yet. We still have some news to let you all know before you all go. Bam. Okay. Right. So we have upcoming events. Julius, do you want to talk about the upcoming events?
Yeah, sure. So next week on Wednesday, we will be having a Sagar who will be talking to us about what's new in Android 12. And one thing that's cool is that Android Dev Summit in the US just concluded last week. And there are a lot of new announcements related to Android as well. So he will be talking and expanding more around Android 12, specifically for Android 12L, which has a lot to do with how the new version of Android can actually work on larger screens in a much more efficient way. So please watch out for that. Afterwards, we will also have Xiao Tao, who will be talking to us about Google Play billing integration. So this is a very good opportunity for us to kind of see how we can integrate payments in our mobile apps. So I do strongly recommend you to join us in this event as well. Finally, we have Bei from Facebook who will be sharing with us how is it like to be a software engineer for the last 20 years. There will be a lot of information that we can actually learn from her, which we normally don't get from our guests. So please do look forward to this. This will be on the first Saturday of December.
Oops. Okay, never mind. The music came on too early, but I'm just gonna flash back to the screen later. Those are the like, share, subscribe stuff. Just make sure you like, share, subscribe. Unfortunately, I think the music is misconfigured. It played a bit too early. But hey, this is a joy of volunteering for tech community. Sometimes these things happen, but yeah, well, everything is fun, I guess. So yeah, make sure you tune in to our events for next week, next Wednesday. See you guys there. Bye.